Good morning, everybody. How are you today? Yes? Woo! Good. We're very happy to see you all here. I'm a bit sick, so this is going to be a very bad intro and kickoff to the keynote, right? So bear with me, and if I collapse on stage, don't worry. I've got paracetamol in my backpack, so just feed me some of that. But welcome to SpeckleCon. It's funny, SpeckleCon, it's our third real conference, but it's the first time in person. So I don't know if you've followed us along. In 2021, we organized Connect, which was an online conference at the height of COVID. It was very fun. In 2023, we renamed it the SpeckleCon because we realized Facebook was doing a Connect conference, and there was a bunch of others doing a Connect conference. So we rebranded. And now in 2024, a few years later, we realized, hey, COVID is over. We can actually meet in person and get people in a room, and that's fun because you can buy beers for people and so on. So, very happy to see you all here. And we have extra seats in front. My co-founder tells me we have extra seats in front. If people want to sit down, please come over. There's 2 days to SpeckleCon 2024. There's today and there's tomorrow. Tomorrow it's all about workshops, and today is all about talks. The keynote, what we're starting with, is a series of announcements, and then basically we're going to hand over to people from the industry who've been playing around with Speckle and more to showcase essentially their projects. You're here today, so I hope this superfluous slide doesn't offend you. If you're not here, raise your hands. After the conference today, there's drinks at the Marquee, which is really close by. It's 2 minutes walking away. If you get lost, follow Senda. I hope you don't get lost. It's literally around the corner. And tomorrow, we're meeting in a different place, which is more towards Fitzrovia. If you're attending the workshops, write this down. If not, check your emails. I hope everything's okay. Fire exits, you know where they are? I don't think we need to do this anymore. Toilets are over there. Anything else I should mention? No? Okay. Cool. Then I'm going to kick it off. We got a bunch of questions around what is Speckle. Maybe as a question like, who the fuck am I? Like, I'm Dimitri, co-founder of Speckle. I used to be an architect. I used to code a lot in high school. Then, essentially, long story short, I kept on coding, and Speckle was born somehow, which we will let you know how, the story. But who remembers this logo? Oh, wow. I'm impressed. Quite a few of you. Okay. Cool. So this is the logo from around 2015. Right. Yeah, I'm going to explain that part in a bit. So, late 2015, this is the slide I wanted to edit, Matteo, so it refreshed. It was really small at the beginning, but anyways. Round about late 2015, I escaped from practice, and I joined UCL as a Marie Curie research fellow. I was getting very bored during my literature review, and I decided to essentially write the first commit of Speckle, like trying to figure out what the problem is by actually doing something. Now, 2 years later, this creature sends me a text message on Slack. So we used to have a Slack group back then for Speckle, and essentially this is how I got pretty much my first contributor. Like Matteo texted me, hey, we should meet. We meet, and then he develops the Dynamo connector soon thereafter. This is how Speckle got its first contributor. 2018, Speckle grows, and so on. And then in 2020, because I couldn't resist the charms of that creature, together with Matteo, we decided to get married and start a company, pretty much. Right? We raised 1 million pre-seed round, and then in 2022, we kept on building and growing. Adoption was going up and to the right, so we raised the seed round. And then, last but not least, this year, we managed to raise Series A. Kind of throughout all this time, like, one thing always stayed the same, our mission. which is to make AEC better. Both Matteo and myself are former computational designers / architects. We used to code. And basically with Speckle, we're scratching our own itches around how data flows in the industry, the basis on which we're building tools, and so on and so forth. In short, we're building Speckle for you, and we're building Speckle to make AEC better. Cool. Now, we also get a lot this question of what is Speckle. So I think most of you, especially since so many of you raised your hands around like the old-time logo, kind of know what Speckle is. But for those of you who don't know, we now present Speckle as the AEC Data Hub. Speckle is built essentially on 3 value pillars that I'm going to go through, and then my colleagues will expand more in depth throughout the keynote. First one is connectivity, second one is collaboration, and last but not least is automation. Connectivity, it's not just about interoperability. I think this has been pretty much a misconception, but it's about meaningful workflows. So we want to enable informal, de-risked dialogue between people with data, when it's needed, how it's needed, and in a non-confrontational manner. So in short, we can replace a bit our RFIs. And Claire and Kate, who I think are somewhere here, will talk about this more later on in the conference. But Speckle, and this is very important, it's not just an A to B solution or a point-to-point solution. Speckle, being web first, is essentially a collaboration enabled from default moment. We have a very powerful viewer, there's infinite versioning, so there's a whole kind of dimension on Speckle online, and the data becomes more accessible than it used to be. So it's not just about viewing models in a browser, but it's about essentially enabling you to take your Revit models, for example, outside of your computer and do great things with them, with other stakeholders. Last but not least, and this has been a very slow build-up, is automation. Some might say that this should be enough, like what we had so far is okay, but the problem is like we have all this data that's sloshing through Speckle, right? The obvious question is, what do you do with it? As developers, we know continuous integration, continuous delivery, but it's very easy for us to enable for you to essentially author and consume functions that save you time, that basically run on top of a model whenever data is going through Speckle. And this is something Jonathan and Chuck will be talking more about. Now, the team was dubious whether I should keep this slide in or not. I got mixed reactions from a bunch of people. But I think another question that we usually get is Speckle like basically ACC? Right? The answer is not really, actually not. So all that I've described so far is based on top of an open source data infrastructure layer that is file-based, and that is object-based and not file-based. Oops. I told you guys, I'm not at my best today. So yes. But in short, inside Speckle, we don't deal with files that much, right? Everything is a file in the end, but ultimately what Speckle offers you is that essentially like every wall, window, door, line becomes a row in a database. And that means you can leverage that data without Autodesk Funny tokens in a way that essentially you and your company can flourish and build value on top of. And I think that's the end of my very sideways intro, and I'll hand over to Benjamin, if I'm not mistaken, to walk you through the collaborative data hub part, and Gergu. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Nice to be here. I'm Benjamin. I am product lead on the web team, the web platform, and
And I'm Gergu. Sorry, mics are weird. I used to be an architect. Now I'm the lead software architect here at Speckle, mostly working on the web team and a bit more.
All right. Yeah, and we're here to talk about Speckle as a collaborative data hub. And more specifically, today's topic is on a collaborative team product we've recently announced called Workspaces. And but before we get into the juicy parts of all the nice features that are in Workspaces, first, like a bit of context about how teams manage their work on Speckle today. Most teams in the Speckle community, they work from like the main server. I'm not sure in this room, there are probably a lot of people in the other camp, but most teams in the community work from the main server inside projects. And it's great because you can get started in 30 seconds, you can invite your team and then you're started, but there are a lot of feedback we get from teams very quickly, that they lack control over their work, that lack some features around security and compliance. I think very quickly you start to get the problem that, okay, I need a better overview of my team's work. The files, or not the files, the projects, not files today. The projects are owned by individual users, hence why we talk about personal projects. And they also, sometimes they run into some problems with IT departments who say, actually, you're not allowed because we have some security and some compliance needs. So this is why a lot of people also go for the other option, where they go for their own dedicated server. Either one they self-host, or one that they pay us to manage for them. And so this is also great, because out of the box you get a lot of control and security, because it's your server. And you can also choose where your data is hosted. But there are also issues, because you need technical skills to self-host, and it takes time to manage, or you need to rely on us to manage it for you. And also you still have some problems where your projects are still all over the server with little control. So something has been missing right in the middle. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and this is Workspaces. Workspaces combine the best of both worlds. It's, you get the simplicity of just getting started in 30 seconds, because they are available on the main server, our server. But you also get the control, the security, and the compliance of being on your own dedicated server. And they are for teams of all sizes, small teams with just a few projects, or big enterprise organizations who can get the same that they used to get on their own dedicated server. And the best thing is that you can get started in a couple of minutes instead of hours or through us. Yeah. And Gergo will talk a bit about what Workspaces are.
Thank you. I'll walk through some of the key features of Workspaces. I'll try to make this not as a reading the feature listings, but walking through why Workspaces will work for you. Yeah, so starting with that, as Benjamin said, many times you need to manage your project teams, and we currently allow for that to happen on a per project basis. In Workspaces, every member of a workspace automatically gets visible into all of the projects. So your team has the full insight into the company's ongoing initiatives. And also, as a user of multiple workspaces, you can easily switch between different places. So you can very easily collaborate between different teams, different companies, as a contractor for multiple places, for example. Probably needless to say, but all of our current connectors already support Workspaces fully. So that experience is out of the box seamless. What you need, as Benjamin said, there's a need for better management features as someone who's running your company's data strategies. So we give the workspace administrators a central place to manage all of the projects and all of the users' permissions, so it's very easy to see who gets access to what and what they are working on, right? Also, administrators are out of the box always owners of all of the projects in the workspace, so they can easily manage the workflows on the per project basis, right? We know that there's a need for more, because many times project teams are fluid and they are changing, and there's always a need for that specific external collaborator on a project or a client to be included. So we are introducing guest users who are specifically granted access on a per project basis, so they can get insight, either read or write access to the project. And also workspace admins get a dedicated list to see which guests are accessing which projects in the workspace. So far, we've been discussing, or I've been showing you a lot of the organization features, But we also know there's another side of adopting Speckle in your company, which is security features. So I have the luxury to talk about very fancy IT security stuff. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, so this is, I try to make this not dry, but bear with me. There will be some enterprise-ready discussions, which was a big theme of Speckle for us this year, of how do we make that jump from the cool open source project into something that you can bring into your company and have easy discussions with your IT department around Speckle adoption, right? So these features are for you to wave with your IT department. First is domain security. So we know from our recent penetration test that Speckle as a platform is very secure. We went through that recently, and we passed with flying colors, luckily. But we also need to give you more powers on a per workspace basis. First, workspace admins have the ability to enable what we call domain security. They can use their company email to register it and bind it into the workspace. And that gives you a policy to filter which users get to access the workspace. So only people with their company email on their Speckle account get to be full-fledged members of the workspace, but you can still invite external collaborators who are not compliant with that policy. With an email-based security thing, there also comes a nice discoverability feature that we call domain discoverability. It's a weird name, but apparently it's industry standard. So once you've registered your email domain in the company, what we get is outside of the box, when a new member of your team joins Speckle, we can show this very fancy banner of, hey, your team is already using Speckle, you can join this workspace. We heard a lot of anecdotes that many teams in companies have been parallelly using Speckle without knowing about it. And this is us trying to bridge those gaps inside companies. Plus, you get more control as a workspace owner around your team's data, right? We went also one step further, because we know that single sign-on is a big thing. Many companies have strict requirements around single sign-on. So we spend a lot of time developing a per workspace single sign-on integration. So a workspace administrator practically self-serve can register their single sign-on provider in a matter of minutes, not talking through sales, not going to custom deployments. But yeah, you can get started with a very secure workspace very quickly. And next up, last but not least, is data regionality. With Workspaces, you can choose the region where your data is hosted. You can define where your 3D data lives. Many times we know it's contractual obligation to have your data hosted in a specific region. That's all the features. Nice. Back to Benjamin.
Thank you. You might have seen that Workspaces is actually already live. Some of you might have one, because it's been in a public beta since September. And it's been going very well. We already have hundreds of Workspaces on the platform, and also, luckily, some happy users. One of them is from UN Studio, who are telling us that that it is making the adoption of Speckle easier within the organization, and also like the features around permissions, and it's just making their life much easier. So this is exactly what we want, and we're very happy to see it. A big part of Workspaces is also that it's a paid feature. Workspaces come in 3 plans: team plan, the pro plan, the business plan, the nice names. Without going too much into detail, like of course in all the plans you get like a workspace, you get the nice control with role management and guest users and domain security. Also some nice things around automate that you'll hear in the later in this keynote. Then in the other plans you get single sign-on, and then in the top plan you get the data residency. It's easy to get started. You just sign up and you get a 30-day free trial to get started, and then you can go on from there. And if you're from academia, we also have an academia program. Then it's free. So you go talk to us. Yeah. And also extremely exciting. Yeah. Very exciting. You can tell your IT department about this one. As you already said, we are compliant. Trust us. Yeah. So all of this is available on app.speckle the systems in the coming weeks. As I've already said, you can already go try it out, but everything else we said, and including the plans, will be available and live. So keep an eye out for a nice announcement. Yeah. Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Claire, and this is Kat. We're going to talk to you about the connected part of the Data Hub today. I'll do a quick, brief intro of myself. I've been a software engineer with Speckle building connectors for almost the past 4 years or so. Before Speckle, I've worked as a design consultant and computational designer at Gary Tech, where I was working on delivering huge projects like Menlo Park campus with Facebook, Battersea project in London, Guggenheim in Abu Dhabi. And it was working on these projects where I realized that data wrangling was one of the largest productivity bottlenecks in AEC. And I joined Speckle to try to fix that problem. I'll give it to Kat.
I'm Katerina. I'm not a photographer, just for today. I am a software engineer at Speckle. I work on geospatial data and GIS connectors. My background is urban planning. I worked in the Future Cities Lab in Singapore or on large also urban development projects. And then I did my PhD on interdisciplinary collaborations in AEC, and that's how I ended up in Speckle.
All right, so over the past half year or so, the connectors team at Speckle have been working really hard to deliver the next generation of our connectors. For those of you that don't know, I think most people probably do, connectors are the main driver of Speckle data authorship. They are plugin integrations into desktop applications such as Rhino, Revit, etc., allowing you to publish and load your AEC models with ease. Speckle connectors are more than just interoperability, as we've heard. They help you understand your BIM data and allow you to easily communicate with your peers to make better delivery decisions. And as we scale up, we're placing more and more emphasis on better performance, like stable, high speed, send and receives, and more intuitive, lowest friction user experience across all of our connectors. So what does the next gen connector look like? We've gone through a few iterations of our user interface. And with this third generation that we're going to show you today, we're bringing the power of a modern web front end into your desktop modeling applications. Our very first desktop interface was pretty simple, but it was quite limited in its functionality. So it was quite easy to use, but lacked some settings and features to allow you to customize your workflows. We then iterated again. Version 2 introduced many more features and better integration with our web app, but it also resulted in a somewhat overcrowded and sometimes complicated interface, which made it difficult to learn and to use. So with our next-gen interface, hopefully we are delivering the best of both worlds. It's intuitive and simple to use, and has some really cool new enhanced features to help you in your day-to-day modeling work. I'll go into some of those new features now. These are exclusive to our next-gen connectors. So here, if you've published or loaded a model with Speckle, you should be able to see exactly which objects you have published or loaded in your application just by clicking on each model in our UI. Super useful. We've also introduced change tracking directly in the connector. So once you've published a model and you make some changes to any objects that you've published, we'll detect that automatically and prompt you to publish again, so you can always keep your models in sync between your applications and our web app. If you've sent a link to your published model to collaborators, they look at your model, they maybe drop a few comments, we'll also show you directly in the interface when someone's stalking your project development or just generally interacting with your model on the web. So it gives you a nicer, like real-time feeling to your experience. And then finally, we'll prompt you to always stay up to date. If you've loaded a collaborator's model in yours, and they make a change, they publish a new version, then we'll give you a notification and prompt you to update your loaded model as well. So you can always be working with the latest versions in your application. So more than just a fancy new interface, we've also completely redesigned the architecture of our connectors to give you like excellent baseline performance on operations like sending and receiving. These are some numbers that we've benchmarked on a relatively large Revit model. We're seeing significantly faster first sends and receives compared to our old connectors. And then we also have an amazing, like more than 1,000% improvement on same session sends because we're doing some clever things under the hood, only sending what's changed. We're just being smarter overall about how we're handling our data, or your data, rather. And yes, we've also significantly reduced the footprint of our plugin on your computer. On the same Revit model, we're seeing 50% smaller version sizes and memory footprints compared to the old connectors, which means we're using less allocations on your machine during publish and load operations. And yes, so we've seen some nice new features, some baseline performance improvements, but I think actually the most significant change that we're introducing is that we've also clarified what and how you should be using your connectors. So essentially, we've defined a set of like clear AEC workflows. Our old connectors were built more with interoperability, connectivity as their main focus. While this was great for solving some specific pain points in data transfer, these like send from anywhere, receive from anywhere workflows were often asymmetrically implemented and not always fit for purpose. So like what that meant was that the quality of like BIM objects that you receive often varied widely between different applications, and also models were often published with maybe more information than necessary for your particular use case. So with NextGen, we want to introduce 3 specific workflows that we're supporting with our connectors, which we're calling multiplayer modeling, which is our high fidelity interoperability workflow. We have real-time coordination, which lets you publish a model once and consume it anywhere, at least its geometric representation and extra properties. And then we finally have data extraction, which enables better decision making by helping you understand exactly what is inside your models. So let's take a closer look at each of these. Multiplayer modeling is designed for teammates that are working on developing the same model, maybe within the same application or across any application that supports this workflow. A prime example of multiplayer modeling would be like 2 architects working on different parts of the same model. Maybe one focuses on the site here, or like, and then the other focuses on the building. The models that you load from your teammates will be received in high fidelity format, so you can bring them into your model and work with them directly as native objects. This lets you stay like pretty easily in sync with your teammates while you're working. The real-time coordination workflow is a receive-based workflow, meaning that any published Speckle model can be received in any real-time coordination connector that with its like basic geometry and important properties. So unlike the multiplayer workflow, the objects here that you're receiving are in a simplified form, like think meshes and polylines, like basically what you get in the web viewer. And this is intended to be used as reference geometry while you're working in your application. Then last but not least, we have our most foundational workflow, which is data extraction. This is a send-only workflow that every Speckle next-gen connector will by default support. Whenever you publish a model to Speckle, you're extracting AEC properties on your objects. And like our web viewer gives you like quick insights into those objects when you view them in the web. If you want to sort your model objects by their material, volume, thermal mass, structural loads, etc., you can just add a property filter in your viewer application. You can also supercharge this data extraction workflow with our improved like Power BI support. You can extend it into impressive dashboards. You can link and embed our viewer directly in these dashboards, and you can keep track of critical quantities, know when you're about to go over budget, and et cetera, as you develop your project with your team. So yes, to iterate again on the workflows, like our data extraction workflow consolidates your AEC model data into a web-first format on a single server. So therefore, this like provides a real long-term value for your company. In the early years at Speckle, we've focused on interoperability as the core value proposition of our connectors. But now we're seeing the foundational value as data extraction. So this enables you to understand the data inside your models and allows you to leverage modern web technologies like web apps, machine learning, et cetera, to build your company's IP. Each workflow is an additional layer that builds upon the previous workflows. So real-time coordination is the next layer on top of data extraction, adding receiving capability to your connector. It's a basic consumption of Speckle models, and you can even think of our web viewer as a real-time coordination Speckle connector. And then finally, we have multiplayer modeling as the topmost workflow layer that allows you to bounce objects back and forth between different connectors in their native form. As a sort of very advanced workflow, only a select few connectors will be capable of supporting multiplayer. So these workflow layers reflect how we're going to develop next-gen connectors, and the stage of development will correspond to their maturity as a connector. When we add support for a new next-gen connector, we will always start at the foundational data extraction layer. And then as the connector matures, we'll gradually add additional layers of functionality. And to wrap up the workflow section, you can think of data authored with Speckle connectors as the primary data source for your Speckle hub. Collaboration in the web, analysis with Speckle Automates are both built on top of this data source. And in effect, every version that you author is, in a way, a unit of currency in the Speckle economy. But connectivity is more than just connectors. We also have a long history of Speckle data being integrated with custom applications. We'll see some, I think, powerful examples of custom applications later on in this presentation. But we also have our very own geospatial Speckle built by Katarina as a prime example of expanding Speckle data beyond just connectors. And pass it off to Kat to wrap up the presentation.
Thank you. So building further on the idea of treating Speckle as a data hub, we started expanding the usage of Speckle into other fields, such as the geospatial field. And as most of design and architectural data is by definition geospatial, we thought it's about time to treat it as such. With GeoSpeckle, or Geospatial Speckle, we've set up a separate piece of infrastructure that acts as an entry point for any desktop or web-based GIS app or map publishing platform that can request Speckle data and give you back in a geospatial format. Just after sending your data to Speckle from your software of choice, you will be able to share your already geolocated model via URL, just like your usual Speckle URL. And because we are making use of the data standards in geospatial fields, such as OGC API, you will be able to add your Speckle data as a layer to any web map without any external plugins or extensions. And finally, you will be able to even map the comments that other users have left in your project, because it is also a part of Speckle data. In other words, the connection to the real world, often missing from architectural projects, is now being handled for you, no matter what original application you used for sending your Speckle model. So what's on the roadmap for connectivity for the next year? Some of the most requested features. We are working on the IFC parser with Chris, who you will hear from later tomorrow. So you will be able to upload your IFC files directly on the web better. And we are also improving our Power BI connector by adding an offline mode. For the other connectors, we are continuously improving their baseline performance and bringing tighter integration of the web app features into the desktop connectors, so you can collaborate seamlessly in both environments. And finally, that last point was on the roadmap, but it was actually released just yesterday. So you can look forward to seeing your automation results directly in your desktop model that can highlight any of your automation report objects. Of course, we will be adding new next-gen connectors to the 5 that we already support, reaching the parity with version 2 as quickly as possible. Since the last release, we've already added ArchiCAD, Civil 3D, and Tekla for data extraction basic workflows. So keep an eye for the new ones that are upcoming in the next months. And finally, this is a page where you can download the next-gen connectors, try faster and more intuitive workflows, and since today also see the automation results. Chuck and Jonathan will tell you more about the automation in Speckle.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charles. I'm Chuck today. I joined Speckle earlier this year. Longtime fanboy. So wonderful to be part of the team for real. It's kind of crazy to say out loud.
Also in fanboy class, I also indulge myself with telling you a little bit about myself. So in the workflows that Claire just described, I came to Speckle, or came to use Speckle, came to love Speckle from purely the data extraction point. So while everyone else was talking about interoperability and exchanging data between applications, I was working on very large projects. So if you're familiar with London, I was working on the King's Cross project, where there's like 50, 60 buildings. I was working on the transformation of the post-Olympic Games park and other large-scale, huge amounts of really crappy other people's data, and this was my challenge, and so Speckle was kind of meeting that need. And this is why I'm quite excited now to be working with Chuck and the rest of the team on Speckle Automate. So from that data extraction point of view, as a first foundational layer, that gives you a whole load of information, so what are you going to do about it? There's quite a lot of talk about automation in the industry, which is great, long time coming. What does it mean for other people? Well, we're seeing huge growth in generative AI, machine learning, this, that, and the other, very sexy. What was the Speckle approach to this? We launched last year CI/CD for architecture. We were really excited, and essentially what this meant was you are always working with your data, you're always publishing your data. What do you want to happen? Well, you actually want to learn about the data like straight away. You want to know, am I making the right decision? Am I making the right choices with my design and with my collaborators' design? But CI/CD meant a lot to us because we were already practicing that as a software engineering company. Essentially for AEC, it meant that you're publishing data, you're able to validate it, immediately review it, and then act on that. And so that's the kind of the continuous part, is this kind of cycle. So that's the kind of technical view of it, which boiled down, because this is what we love to do at Speckle, into total simplicity. So effectively, the kind of the workflow is publish, and stuff happens. And that's boiling it down, that's what we want to do to try and make everything as straightforward for you and as simple as possible. Yeah, so in SpeckleCon 23, we launched a private beta, and we invited the brave and the savvy to come to us and say, hey, we quite like to do with some, we had some sort of interesting, cool demos. We want to go and do that ourselves. And we had some really interesting people talk to us and saying what they were doing, what they were interested in, or maybe just their response and their kind of reflection on what was happening. But we were kind of building Speckle Automate for ourselves a little bit. And so one of the things that we did learn in the private beta is that it was an amazing experience for a developer or an AEC hacker, a persona, but it wasn't necessarily Automate for all. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that. And picking up from what Chris said, we were expecting this kind of utopic vision that everyone was going to build functions for everybody else, and we were all going to kind of work in the kind of the open source manner. But as Claire rightly pointed out, what you build on top of Speckle is your IP. Just the same as the data is your IP, what you build on top of it is also. So get back to me when functions are private. So today, we're announcing the public beta. It's going to be dovetailed with the launch of Workspaces going live. What we're going to be testing for this time is the other scale of adoption, the adoption of Automate from a normie perspective as opposed to a developer perspective. What does it mean if you have the constraints removed that you are having to work in public? What does that mean now that you're able to work on your personal IP?
And I'd like to talk a little about what the public beta is going to look like in contrast to the private beta. And the first and most important change that's being done is that starting with the public beta, Automate will be available for use with your real production data, right? There's no more secret invites, no more development servers. You'll be able to create automations that run against your existing projects. You'll be able to share these results with your existing teams, right? And you'll be able to use Workspaces to bridge the gaps between collaboration and automation across any number of your projects and teams, right? It's out for real, not just a cute toy to play with somewhere else. So we get asked a lot, and I think specifically, I was ambushed in Copenhagen at the community meetup a few weeks ago, and some of you are back to threaten me in London. But we get asked a lot, how much is this going to cost me, right? And the answer is pretty simple for now, nothing for the near future, right? Automate. Right, we're sharing our compute with you while we shape the future of Automate. It's free because we're learning from you, and we're working together, right? So for the foreseeable future, inside a workspace or outside of it, during the public beta, your functions will run for free. But where do the functions come from, right? During the private beta, as Jonathan just kind of mentioned, we spent a lot of time working with function developers and teams with highly specific workflows. But where we expected to kind of find a community of hackers, right? We also found just as many, if not more people that were expecting to be able to grab something off the shelf, right? I have my data, I want to add some sort of automation, I want to see why this is good and useful for me. And so with the public beta, we'll be releasing the start of a collection of sort of curated functions and automations. We're considering them these sort of narrow but useful units of code that will get you rolling right from the start. Right, we'll continue to develop these, we'll continue to make more, and importantly, we're open to suggestions and requests and co-development with members of the community as we determine what are these units that we all can actually share. But also, this is our most highly requested feature during the private beta. Private functions will also finally be arriving. Right, you'll be able to share your functions with workspaces that you're already a part of, which means that teams can share and develop automations just for your specific workflows. We've built dozens of connectors, we'll continue to build more, but what's kind of hot about private functions is they can be your bridge to any number of API-based services that your teams use, right? Input, output, things that are very bespoke and specific to you, Airtables of the world that we maybe will never get to, but you can get to on your time with private functions. I would say expect to see more soon about the other unique powers that come with using Automate inside of a workspace. During the public beta, you will also start to see Automate start popping up in new places. Right, for example, you'll see things like the results of your validation workflows right in the place where you publish your data. We were supposed to talk about this coming soon, but it has been released into the wild already. But right, the tagline, the punchy bit, Automate runs in the background, but the insight it offers will take center stage. Okay. That was okay. That was pretty good. Thank you. And last and most important, right, we haven't forgotten right, the hackers, the community, the people actually making the functions. Right, Automate, we will continue to offer a quality developer experience. Right, the most fundamental unit of Automate is the function. These are the things that are running and doing the work. We can talk for days about where they should run, how they should run, where you should see them. But we'll continue to offer SDKs, examples, tutorials, and support to make your development as smooth as possible. And back to you.
An understated till now point of view about Speckle Automate is that in combination with the Speckle operating as your data hub, and you are now publishing directly, you're instantly launching automations and getting results in the host application or somewhere else in your control. Effectively, this is allowing you to do a lot of compute, a lot of analysis, and a lot of generative design in one platform, or at least not in terms of keeping control of that, or keeping control of that. It means that you're not pushing out data to some place else on a laptop that gets left on the beach, or down in the dusty corner where the power gets cut and something happens in midstream. Effectively, there is an end-to-end control that you now have of data in and results out. And so it's kind of every aspect that we talked about right at the outset of this about the security of Speckle, Automate also comes with that as well. Just to talk about some of the examples that we got here. With Automate effectively being now another connector or another way of enabling workflows that are not actually possible with off-the-shelf software. So you can start building the workflow first rather than finding a workflow that fits into a piece of software. This is an amazing example built by my colleague Björn. When you're doing design coordination, let's say, and people were either throwing IFCs into Celibri or into Navisworks or something like that, there are some workflows for coordination that do not fit that model. So here what we have is a comparison between ETABS data and Revit data. So imagining whether the two designs are coordinated. These are different fundamental representations of geometry. Therefore, they do not they certainly don't fit clash detection. What you can build discretely here is a kind of comparison, like a like for like, using the power of Speckle's understanding of object types to say, is the design coordinated? It's a long way of describing something that is actually super simple once you start using it. I can see that I'm directly coordinated with my colleagues across different pieces of software. So it's this kind of new workflow that is only enabled through Automate. And the other thing that once you have a team that are able to do coding and you are able to have a team that actually are in control of the data or running the projects, and they're not necessarily the same people, we are able to use Automate to build the bridge between the people who aren't coding and the people who are coding. So you're distributing the knowledge and the expertise of a kind of core group in your practice or in your studio, and allowing and giving power to the people running projects day to day. So this is an example where rule checking is defined externally in Google Sheet or Excel or in Mortar or a Plannerly or something like that. And then those rules can be deployed directly into Automate. And this is what we're going to be building tomorrow. And also, as we saw results coming into the host application, we have kind of speculating what other things we can do with Automate. So we published the result of a hackathon hack that we did just recently in a day. And again, this is Automate in the background. You don't know Automate's happening, but what happens is I would like to learn something about this project. It hoists a function, it runs the function, it gives you the results directly in the viewer. So from a user's perspective, you are completely making the use of Automate without having to do any of the hard wiring. As mentioned by Chuck, we are here to help. We love helping. I particularly love helping. In addition to those public functions, we won't be deploying very complicated code, but we want to work with you. So if you're coming to talk to us and say, we have this particular need, how can Speckle Automate help with that? We're actually helping, we're looking to kind of share our time with you. That's not totally scalable, so in the same time, we're going to be enhancing the SDKs to do repetitive things. Some of the workshop material tomorrow is about what those repetitive things are, but we'll be baking those into the SDK, so you will be able to do Revit analysis from the SDK. So effectively, that's kind of a line drop into your code, and we will be awesome documentation. One of the things that is our challenge. Thank you for listening about Speckle Automate. Over to you guys.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Senda. I am a product marketing manager here at Speckle. And if you don't know what that is, and you're attending my workshop tomorrow, you will see it in practice.
And you should definitely join Senda's workshop tomorrow. I'm Matteo, one of the co-founders together with Dimitri. We have a similar background, so I also studied architecture and engineering back in the days, but turned software developer, been hacking away in the industry for about 10 years now, and we're excited to be talking about the community behind Speckle.
So when I first joined Speckle, one thing that I was very happy to see was the engaging community that we have. And that is you. And so thank you again for being here, because you're driving what Speckle is. We've been very happy to organize events like these. We get to meet our community in person, and we see how engaging you are, and this is helping us shape what Speckle is. Our community is also driving us and pushing us to do more initiatives with Speckle. So a few initiatives that I am very happy to share with you today. Some of you here are part of these, are the Ambassador Program, which we launched a few months ago. And we've had 2 events happen in real life, one in Copenhagen, organized by Victor, who's right there from Perkins and Will, as well as Ashkan from Henning Larsen, who's not here today, but we're thinking about him. And we've had a chance to meet our community in Copenhagen, which is very intimidating. I agree with Chuck. But it was great to meet all of you, and some of you here are here today again. We've also had another event with Cristobal from UN Studio, which you saw earlier, in Amsterdam, and that was also very successful, and we had to meet more people there in person. So this is to say the program is now officially here. I also hear that someone also from London will be launching events. Adam over there. And if you're interested, please come to me or anyone from the team. We're happy to partner with you and do more events like these. Another initiative that we're happy to launch is the Speckle Podcast. And this is a new format that we're trying to shed light on the achievements of AEC leaders. Here you see Ingrid, but we have other speakers such as Catherine, Jordana, Vincenza, and Aida, who also did this with us yesterday here in London. So yes, a lot to come. Please like, subscribe, reach out to us if you're interested in this initiative. Our community is also spreading across the academic sphere, and you can see here our academia program, which was already mentioned. We're partnering with a lot of professionals in the field, and we're enabling and empowering them with Speckle. And we like to say that we're investing in the future as well. We are seeing also professors coming to us and telling us how Speckle is helping them have an impact on the future generations of architects and engineers. So we're very excited to see this grow. And again, if you're interested in this program, reach out to us. It's free with Workspaces, so worth talking about that too. I'll pass it over to Matteo.
Thank you. Our community is not just made of architects, engineers, designers, students, professors, and hackers. We see more and more companies relying on Speckle as their digital backbone. And especially we have a few startups who started using our technology as a way to power data exchanges, to power their own innovations that are transforming the AEC industry. And I'm really excited to give a few shout outs to some of these startups we've been working to work together with, or that we simply know are friends with. The first ones are the team at Guyup. They're based in Denmark. They've developed real-time LCA, which is an accurate, efficient, and collaborative platform to understand, reduce, and document climate change. Climate impact. They use Speckle for interoperability. What Speckle helps them to do is essentially, again, get data outside of proprietary file formats, outside of software silos, and it gets straight into their platform. Thanks to the team at Guyup for their PRs. They've been very helpful in getting material quantities out of Revit. Shout out to Stika, also based in Denmark. Stika is transforming the way furniture is designed and used by deploying circular design at scale. They want to reduce waste and extend product lifespans. Stika is using Speckle as a model catalog, essentially embedding the data hub within their store. We also have Keyframe. They're based in Australia. They're developing an emerging browser-based spatial digital twin that allows for very large BIM models, point clouds, GIS data sets to be shared project-wide with all the stakeholders. Also, Keyframe, they're using Speckle as a way to connect all the different data sources and bring even more data within their platform. Then we have Agendo, and I believe maybe Will or some of the founders from Gendo might be here in the audience, George. Gendo helps you create beautiful images in seconds. They're using AI to generate photorealistic renderings directly online. And we're really excited to be announcing that an integration with Gendo within our front end is coming out sometime very soon. So it's just a matter of providing some prompts, and the AI will do the rest and generate some very pretty images. And we can see one coming up here. To conclude the keynote of today, I think Dim hinted a bit at the fact that Speckle is inevitable. We don't want you to take our word for it, but please stay tuned for the rest of the day, see other industry leaders, what they have achieved with Speckle. It's great for us to see others, adopting Speckle and making it their data hub, the enabler for collaboration, connectivity, and automation. I think we can all agree that the AEC industry needs a better future and desperately needs an open and transparent data hub. We're here building it, and there are people with deep pockets backing us. This means you can trust us. By adopting Speckle, you're investing in a better future for all of us. And just to recap the main announcement of today, of this morning, Workspaces will be released very soon. They're the best place if you need to manage users and projects in a single place, if you need to have security and compliance, and they're the best place to work as a team, whether you're part of a large or small organization. We're also announcing our next-gen connectors. This is the third iteration of our connectivity offering. They're the most powerful and best UX ever so far. Please give them a try. They're already available online. And lastly, Automate is out in public beta. It supports private functions, so that's, again, the best place for you and your company to create your library of functions and scale your digital impact. And I think that's all from us today. I'm handing it over to James from Zutari, who came from quite far away. Thank you.